Sharps rifles are a series of large-bore single-shot rifles, beginning with a design by Christian Sharps in 1848, and ceasing production in 1881. They are renowned for long-range accuracy. By 1874 the rifle was available in a variety of calibers and had been adopted by the armies of a number of nations and was one of the few successful designs to transition to metallic cartridge use. Reproductions of the Sharps rifle are currently made by different rifle companies, and the rifle has become an icon of the Old West due to its use in a number of movies and books in the Western genre. History: Sharps' initial rifle was patented September 12, 1848 and manufactured by A.S. Nips at Mill Creek, Pennsylvania, in 1850. The second model used the Maynard tape primer, and surviving examples are marked Edward Maynard, patentee 1845. In 1851 the second model was brought to the Robbins and Lawrence Company of Windsor, Vermont, where the model 1851 was developed for mass production. Rollin White of the R&L Company invented the knife-edge breech block and self-cocking device for the box lock model 1851. This is referred to as the first contract, which was for 10,000 model 1851 carbines, of which approximately 1,650 were produced by R&L in Windsor. In 1851 the second contract was made for 15,000 rifles, and the Sharps Rifle Manufacturing Company was organized as a holding company with $1,000 in capital and with John C. Palmer as president, Christian Sharps as engineer, and Richard S. Lawrence as master armorer and superintendent of manufacturing. Sharps was to be paid a royalty of $1 per firearm, and the factory was built on R&L's property in Hartford, Connecticut. The Model 1851 was replaced in production by the Model 1853. Christian Sharps left the company in 1855 to form his own manufacturing company called C. Sharps & Company in Philadelphia. Richard S. Lawrence continued as the chief armorer until 1872 and developed the various Sharp models and their improvements that made the rifle famous. In 1874, the company was reorganized and renamed the Sharps Rifle Company, and it remained in Hartford until 1876, whereupon it relocated to Bridgeport, Connecticut. The 1874 pattern Sharps was a particularly popular rifle that led to the introduction of several derivatives in quick succession. It handled a large number of .40 to .50 caliber cartridges in a variety of loadings and barrel lengths. Hugo Burckhardt designed the Sharps Burckhardt Model 1878, the last rifle made by the Sharps Rifle Company before its closing in 1881. Reproductions of the paper cartridge Sharps M1859 and M1863 rifle and carbine, the metallic cartridge 1874 Sharps rifle, and Sharps Burckhardt Model 1878 are being manufactured today. They are used in Civil War reenacting, hunting and target shooting. Sharps military rifles and carbines. The military Sharps rifle was a falling block rifle used during and after the American Civil War. Along with being able to use a standard percussion cap, the Sharps had a fairly unusual pellet primer feed. This was a device which held a stack of pelleted primers and flipped one over the nipple each time the trigger was pulled and the hammer fell, making it much easier to fire a Sharps from horseback than a gun employing individually loaded percussion caps. The Sharps rifle was produced by the Sharps Rifle Manufacturing Company in Hartford, Connecticut. It was used in the Civil War by the U.S. Army marksmen, known popularly as Burden's sharpshooters in honor of their leader Hiram Burden. The Sharps made a superior sniper weapon of greater accuracy than the more commonly issued muzzle-loading rifled muskets. This was due mainly to the higher rate of fire of the breech-loading mechanism and superior quality of manufacture. At this time, however, many officers were distrustful of breech-loading weapons on the grounds that they would encourage men to waste ammunition. In addition, the Sharps rifle was expensive to manufacture, and so only 11,000 of the Model 1859s were produced. Most were unissued or given to sharpshooters, but the 13th Pennsylvania Reserves carried them until being mustered out in 1864. Sharps military carbine . The carbine version was very popular with the cavalry of both the Union and Confederate armies and was issued in much larger numbers than the full-length rifle. The falling block action lent itself to conversion to the new metallic cartridges developed in the late 1860s, and many of these converted carbines in 50 to 70 government were used during the Indian Wars in the decades immediately following the Civil War. Some Civil War issue carbines had an unusual feature, a hand-cranked grinder in the stock. Although long thought to be a coffee mill, experimentation with some of the few survivors suggests the grinder is ill-suited for coffee. The modern consensus is that its true purpose was for grinding corn or wheat. Unlike the Sharps rifle, the carbine was very popular and almost 90,000 were produced. By 1863, it was the most common weapon carried by Union cavalry regiments, although in 1864 many were replaced by 7-shot Spencer carbines. Some Sharps clones were produced by the Confederates in Richmond. Quality was generally poorer and they normally used brass fittings instead of iron. Sharps sporting rifles. Sharps made sporting versions from the late 1840s until the late 1880s. After the American Civil War, converted Army surplus rifles were made into custom firearms, and the Sharps factory produced models 1869 and 1874 in large numbers for commercial buffalo hunters and frontiersmen. These large-bore rifles were manufactured with some of the most powerful black powder cartridges ever made. Sharps also fabricated special long-range target versions for the then-popular Creedmoor style of 1,000-yard target shooting. Many modern black powder cartridge silhouette shooters use original and replica Sharps rifles to target metallic silhouettes cut in the shapes of animals at ranges up to 500 meters. Shiloh Rifle Manufacturing Company, and C. Sharps Arms of Big Timber, Montana, have been manufacturing reproductions of the Sharps rifle since 1983 and 1979, respectively. Cultural significance. Some movies which showed the strengths of the Sharps rifle are Billy Two Hats, Rancho Deluxe, Valdez is Coming, Quigley Down Under, Pixar's Up and True Grit. In Valdez is Coming, Burt Lancaster's character, Bob Valdez, uses a Sharps against character Frank Tanner's men at 1,200 yards. Glenn Campbell's character, Texas Ranger La Beauouf, is armed with a Sharps and uses it to kill Lucky Ned Pepper in the famous Fill Your Hand, You Son of a Bitch scene in the 1969 movie True Grit. In the 1990 western Quigley Down Under, Tom Selleck's title character uses a Sharps rifle. Theater crafts industry went so far as to say, in Quigley Down Under, which we did in 1990, the Sharps rifle practically co-stars with Tom Selleck. This statement was echoed by gunwriters including John Taffin in Guns and Lionel Atwill in Field and Stream. The rifle in Quigley has a 34 inches barrel length, as opposed to the standard 30 length. Firearms manufacturers such as David P. DeSolai and Shiloh Rifle Manufacturing Company have credited these movies with an increase in demand for those rifles. As a result of the popularity of the film, a Sharps match is held annually in Forsyth, Montana known as the Matthew Quigley Buffalo Rifle Match. Originally a 44-inch target was placed at 1,000 yards for each shooter, reminiscent of a scene from the movie. The match is billed as the biggest rifle event shooting in eastern Montana since the Custer Massacre, and has since evolved into a 2-day competition with 8 shots for score on 6 steel silhouette targets at ranges from 350 to 805 yards. On television, the Sharps rifle plays a central role in the murder investigation in the pilot episode of the Longmire series. A Sharps is the weapon used in the murder, and its firing action is central to the climactic action sequence. In the Longmire novel The Cold Dish, the author is incorrect in ascribing the name sharpshooter to the Sharps. The term sharpshooter, referring to marksman, had its origin in English from at least 1801 from the German term Schara 1/4. See also, .50-90 Sharps, Beecher's Bibles, Burden Rifle, Billy Dixon, Frank Wesson Rifles, Private Truman California Joe Head, List of individual weapons of the U.S. Armed Forces, Second Battle of Adobe Walls, Spencer Rifle, listing of Sharps rifles in movies, not to be confused with Sharps rifles, as the 95th Rifles used the Baker rifle. Notes. References, Coates, Earl J., and Thomas S. Dean. An Introduction to Civil War Small Arms. Gettysburg, Penn Thomas Publications, 1990. ISBN 0-939631-25-3. Sellers, Frank M. Sharps Firearms. North Hollywood, California, Bienfeld Pub, 1978. ISBN 0-917714-12-1. Smith, Winston O. The Sharps Rifle, Its History, Development and Operation. New York, W. Morrow and Company, 1943. Oyvind Flattens. From Musket to Metallic Cartridge, A Practical History of Black Powder Firearms. Crowwood Press, pages 123-125. ISBN 978-1,847,975,935. External links: Sharps Model 1874, Background History, Sharps Model 1874, Shooting and Reloading, The Sharps Rifle, Rifle Shooter Magazine, http://schillerrifle.com/